coming today. I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm really excited that you get to hear from one of my seniors who's worked very, very hard for several years on the project. He's excited to talk to you about. You know, in the college classroom, we challenge our students to think critically, and Mr. Kole Kelley took me serious on that. Okay, he's thought of something different than others have even dared to dream of, and I'm excited to see him follow this through. Yes, we've argued from different perspectives. Kole, who would not talk to me for the first semester that I had him in class, right? Now knows how to, handle a conversation and direct a conversation in class very well. He has future plans I'm sure we'll all be proud of. He's chosen a path, law school, I'm told, and so we'll argue for a living. So we do our best to prepare him well. I hope you all ask some good questions. We tend to try to throw him a curveball once in a while, and let's make him hit a few, right? Kole, I'm very, very proud of you, very proud of your project, very proud of your critical thinking, and Kole has branched out and taken classes across campus. He's stood to the challenge, and we've asked and requested the help of Dr. Benson, I know, and even over in some poli-sci classes. He's learned to broach the subject from several different perspectives. So please, Mr. Kelley.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Dr. Boozer. Good morning. How are you guys? Is everybody doing all right? Have you guys had a chance to stop by the poster presentations yet? Everybody? If you haven't yet, please stop by. It's awesome, and this entire celebration of knowledge is kind of just fantastic. I enjoy it, and I'm humbled and very, very gracious to be a part of it. I'd like to thank the Student Scholar Day Committee, Adams State, and of course my mentors, Dr. Boozer and Dr. Benson, for helping me with this and allowing me the opportunity to talk about this. What we're going to talk about today is a question of how to balance agriculture's water needs with municipal water needs, but stay in the realm of historical water rights, because that's important when we're talking about this, and it's essential to understand the system that we're trying to play with as we're trying to be proactive on this issue. A great place to start with this is we're actually going to take a look at California. This right here is the Delta smelt, and this silver-sided fish, which is rumored to smell like cucumbers. I didn't actually get to take the trip to smell one of these guys, but they are rumored to smell like cucumbers. These fish right here, in 1993, they were listed as an endangered species. And why that's important is once they were listed as an endangered species, California had to allocate water every year to try to maintain the habitat of this fish. Not a big deal. We're all for saving the fish, except for the fact that the last 4 to 5 years, California has been in a historic drought. I'm sure we all know they're rumored to only have a year's amount of water supply left, and that is a big problem. This fish sparked what was known as the water wars in California, and that lasted from 1993 to 2010. And what it was a huge legal battle with people on both sides, and it ended up in 2010. They were upheld as an endangered species. They were told you have to allocate this much water to these fish. And just to put a number on this for you, since 2008, they've allocated 1.4 trillion gallons of water to this area just for this fish. And when you think about it, you're like, well, California's big. They probably have a lot of water. It's kind of hard to grasp that number. That's 6 years worth of water for the Central Valley of California, which is below it. And that's a large amount of water, especially when you're in a drought. And I think it's critical to look at this and understand that that's a great example of what can happen when a system that's already stressed faces something extraneous such as this that challenges the system and almost causes it to implode. And that leads us to Colorado, because our system is already beginning to become stressed. Colorado's population, it's grown 1.89% over the last couple of years. It continues to increase, as many of us well know. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at Colorado. And we are a strict prior appropriation system. And what that means is the water is a public resource. It is owned by the public, but it is actually allocated to private users based on this system. And the system is a first-in-time, first-in-right system, what that does is it sets up for junior and senior appropriators. But I'm going to back up a little bit. This court case, Irwin v. Phillips in 1885, is actually what started the appropriation system. And this court case came out of California, and the Supreme Court upheld that we have to have a system to appropriate water in the West. And that was due to the vast landscapes, the arid climate, the arid areas, and just all of that we're dealing with now. In 1860, it began practice in Colorado with the miners. They were the first to go ahead and bring it in. And that should look a little funny to you because Colorado didn't become a state until 1876. So this system has been around in Colorado since before we were even a state. The Colorado Doctrine was actually drafted in 1872. And that's what kind of gives us our parameters for our system, as we were talking about earlier. So this doctrine, what it does is, it gives us our parameters, like I said, the senior and junior appropriators. And what that is a senior appropriator is somebody who put a date in for a right, and they've shown to put the water towards beneficial use before somebody else. And in this system, they get to use the water before a junior appropriator. It's almost a pecking order of who gets water when. It also sets up a no harm kind of clause that says that an appropriator cannot use the water in such a way that would inhibit another water user's right. Somebody cannot just run water out and leave the stream dry for the guy downstream. And that's important to have that protection for each other. The biggest thing about this system and where we run into a snag is the use it or lose it kind of part of our system. If you do not perfect your right, if you don't use it in full, you will either forfeit or abandon your right, and they take that right away from you. And that's where we run into a problem of, okay, we can't just sit here and preach efficiency, because the fact that if we're more efficient in how we're putting the water on the crops, we're going to lose our right, because our system is based off of consumptive use, not amount of water you're pulling out of the stream. And what that is it's based on the amount of water that's actually used with your products. If you're flood irrigating, you would realistically get to pull more water than somebody who's drip irrigating because the consumptive use is the same, and it returns back to the watershed. The Colorado Doctrine also outlines this as a property right, as I said earlier. It's a private right that people own with their property. So when we look at starting to mess with this system, we run into Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment issues on trying to take property away from people, the process and how we do that. It's just a mess. So this is why we have to stay within our realm of these historical rights. So we come to a place where, we look at the question. How do we balance these needs? Because as California has shown us, when our system's already stressed, something else can come in and we can be without water. 70% of our state can be fighting for water with each other. And it's really bad to have agriculturalists and consumers trying to fight over a common resource, because we do have a common goal. Both of us want to have a solid product that we can consume. We want to be able to live a nice lifestyle and go on with our day. So when we look at this and we remember our historical rights, we come to a point of, how do we actually do this? And brings us to our goals. And these goals comes directly from, it's called the Kingdom Policy Stream Theory. It's been at the forefront of politics for at least 20 years. It's how to create effective policy and actually get on agendas. And so these are the three streams that he lists that you have to start with. So identification of the problem. And we understand our problem is water is a scarce resource. But when we look at this right here, we have to understand it from both sides. Because as the California example I spoke of earlier, there were almost polar opposites fighting in that fight. Agriculturalists had a coalition, municipalities had a coalition, and they were talking, and the agricultural coalition was actually better funded than the opposing coalition, yet they lost. And now California's at a spot where they're like, man, we could have used that water, even if it was half that we were sending there, we could have sent it down, which would allow our people to live better. So when we look at the problem, we have to understand it from both sides. And that's going to get into our idea. We need to form a coalition. We need to come together and bridge the gap between municipalities, and agriculturalists. And even beyond that, this coalition would be working with city planners, it'd be working with legislators, because that's how we actually get things on the agenda, and that's how we move forward with effective policy where everybody has a say in it. Here in the San Luis Valley, it's pretty common knowledge now that we're going to become subdistricts with our water rights. And that's not a bad thing. Subdistricting is not a bad thing, and it should help our system. The only problem is we kind of didn't have a say in that. It was kind of forced upon us. And so what building this coalition now would do would allow us to be proactive in this. It would give us a say in what was actually going to be pushed through. And it kind of helps unite us with municipalities. Colorado, we have a lot of industries in Colorado, and a lot of them are water intensive. The natural gas industry is becoming big in Colorado. The mining industry is still here. And it's coming to a point that whichever one of these industries is going ahead and going to work with municipalities first is going to be the one that is going to reap the most benefit from it. And that's because municipalities hold the largest amount of population as opposed to those other industries. So it's in our interest to work with them because we would lose out the least on it. Because when we look at the issue, it's very clear to see how it restricts agriculture, but you have to understand the other side too. In municipalities, I like to use the example of two people are at a bucket that has a gallon of water. They're both drinking out of the bucket. With the population growth of Colorado, it's like adding 2 people to the bucket every year. We wait 3 years, we have 8 or 9 people at that bucket drinking the same gallon of water. That changes things. And they're going to start looking elsewhere to find other water. So this coalition, and what it would have to be, it would have to start at a local level because Colorado is so different. Here in the San Luis Valley, being a high altitude desert, we face different problems than Denver does with our water systems. We reside over an unconfined and a confined aquifer here in the San Luis Valley, and Denver doesn't. They're different. So we'd have to start at a local level to understand the issues at hand. And that's the great thing about subdistricting is going to do, is it's going to allow us to start at a local level. But this coalition, we'd be working at this local level with policy drafted for ourselves, like helping ourselves here. It's being on the front end of this, which leads us to the political atmosphere. Because if we start talking with our local people and we start working with local politicians, that's how we get on the agenda, and that's how we move forward with policy that's great for our area. In the policy window, what that idea is the opportune moment to go ahead and try to push something through. Bills have a shelf life, just like anything else, and we know that they can die on the floor. We have to make sure we're ready for anything and everything. And that's what this coalition does. So how we accomplish these goals is we get wet. We need coalitions, and they need to start at a local level, and these local coalitions will go ahead and branch out to larger state-level coalitions. And what that allows us to do is expand past issues such as water, and we're gonna move to things like urban growth, things that are threatening just livelihood for everybody. And that's what's so great about this is water is such a hot issue right now, especially with how scarce it's becoming. If we go ahead and unite now, it allows us to be on the front end of solving other problems that are going to come up. We have to educate. And what that is educating on both sides. Education is the key to solving a lot of problems, as we know. It's part of the reason why I went ahead and pursued education, so trying to solve problems. But if we're talking to consumers and allowing them to understand that, okay, the water that you see as farmers taking is actually returned to you in the form of commodity products. And we talk to agriculturalists about, okay, they are trying to conserve. They're pursuing instantly hot water, they're pursuing other things as well. Both sides have to understand each other, and they both have to work towards the common goal, because if both sides aren't working towards the common goal, that's what divides us. And that's what we're trying to keep from happening. We're trying to keep from splitting apart and fighting with each other for the next 10 years to have somebody lose. because we don't need to have a loser. We just need to be able to work together. Which leads us to our last point, is being united. So let's say we do have coalitions and they're using methods of alternative transfer, where a farmer, is farming 3 years, and then on the 4th year, they go ahead and leave their land fallow, send their water right to a municipal storage, where the municipalities are able to use it when they need to, with the population growing. And then on the 5th year, they go ahead and get to farm again. Well, certain states are going to look at that and find that excess of water and say, you know what, we're in trouble, we could use that water. Being together with these two industries allows us to fight a unified fight against that and to protect ourselves against that, which is the key when we start looking at this. Because if something like this does happen, we need to make sure that we protect ourselves. And that's the entire point behind this, is being proactive so that we can protect ourselves. I was born and raised on a ranch here in Alamosa. And it's a hard thing to talk about when you start talking to farmers about their water. It's hard for them to even talk about it because they're so afraid of losing it, because it's such a key to everything. And then you talk to huge municipalities and they're worried about having enough water for their people. So it's coming together, bridging that gap, and coming to a place where we can be proactive on these issues. And that's really the key to solving this. I don't know if the problem will ever be completely fixed, but if we fight a unified fight, then we have one goal, and we're working towards one goal. It's not us versus them, it's we as a state, and we're moving forward with this. So, at this time, if you guys have questions, I will be fielding any questions you might have.